Hey everyone, I'm Dave Rotner. I'm the Dean of Academics here at Loveland Classical Schools, K-12. I also teach 6th, 8th, and 11th graders. I've been with the school since it's opened. And today I'm going to talk about our great teaching here at Loveland Classical Schools. Great teaching begins and ends with the Trivium. The Trivium, as in the name, is in 3 parts. There's the grammar stage, the logic stage, and the rhetoric stage. For years, when I would explain the Trivium to people, I would have a triangle. And on the bottom of the triangle, there would be grammar, then there would come logic, and then on top, there would be rhetoric. And as I thought more about it, that just didn't seem to really present the value of the Trivium. And so instead of a triangle, as we would think of it as I described, think of that triangle flipped upside down. So you have grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And in the center of the triangle, there's truth. And we believe that our teaching method and our curriculum leads students to the idea of truth. And so I will go through the Trivium each in its individual parts, as well as how we teach it as a whole here at Loveland Classical Schools. So the Trivium, the grammar stage, this is the first stage of the Trivium. This stage is where you work on your rote memory skills. This is their fact building stage. This is where students absorb facts and they have a foundation of knowledge. Most educational facilities begin and end in the grammar stage. Here's the information, here's the notes, here's the lectures, here's the problems. You repeat it, you regurgitate it, you take a test, boom, you're proficient and you move on. However, at LCS, that's just the start of our educational journey for our students. The next stage is the logic stage. This is where we teach students how to think. Not just think critically, but to actually think and become independent. I love this stage as a teacher because it allows me to know if my students really absorb the material that we had just gone over. I have to ask them questions that they cannot just use their rote memory to answer. They use the information that I've given them, but they have to put it together almost like a puzzle in order to get the answer. So they can't just rifle back in their mind and say, oh, this is what Mr. Rotner's looking for, blah, 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 blah. They have to put it together themselves. So for example, I'll ask my 6th graders, once we've gone through our ancient Greek unit, what if the plague had never occurred to Athens in the 2nd year of the war? Well, in order to answer that question, the students have to know what actually did happen. But when they take that information and reel it back and say, well, if that didn't happen, then this could have happened. And that would have led to this. And that would have led to this. That's the power of thinking, and that allows me to know if my students really understand it. But also with the logic stage is it makes the students a part of the classroom, as opposed to the students just being idle listeners and having information dumped on them. When you ask these logic questions, it makes the students become part of the classroom, and they become independent and individual thinkers. And that's what the logic stage does. It invites the students to become part of the classroom. And that creates a sense of independence and thinking with our students, which is one of our goals here at Loveland Classical Schools. The next part of the Trivium is the rhetoric stage. This is the art of persuasion, the ability to convince somebody of an idea, of a thought, whether it's through a speech, whether it's written, and we pride ourselves on the rhetoric stage. Typically at our school, this is the idea of a thesis. And so in order to graduate from Loveland Classical Schools, all of our seniors have to write, present, and defend a thesis. It's around 18 to 22 pages. That's a tall order, very difficult task. So in order to prepare our students to do so, we begin at 6th grade, where our 6th graders, they'll write, present, and defend a thesis all the way through 11th grade. Of course, the 6th grade thesis looks a lot different than the senior thesis. It's only around 8 paragraphs versus 18 pages. That way they get used to this idea of a thesis, and when they enter high school and they get to their senior year, it's not a scary thought to them. They've been well prepared to do so. That's the Trivium in a nutshell. We have the grammar, logic, and rhetoric stage. Now, we implement the Trivium a bit differently here at Loveland Classical Schools than some traditional classical schools. For example, some classical schools will present the grammar stage at grammar school in elementary. So they'll say younger students, their minds are like sponges, which is true. We'll fill them with facts. And then once they get to middle school, as they become a little more independent, maybe argumentative, I will introduce the logic stage. They can defend their ideas, have a conversation about their ideas, debate their ideas, and then when they get into high school, we will introduce rhetoric to them. However, if you really want to be good at something, you want to be well skilled at something, you need to practice that from a very young age. We'll focus on grammar at the elementary level, but we'll also sprinkle in rhetoric and logic. At the end of the kindergartner's year, a little kindergartner will stand up in front of their class and they will recite a nursery rhyme. Of course, when a kindergartner is presenting, the room's full of parents and relatives, and the kindergartner's not up there giving you their analysis of what life was like in medieval Europe at the time, which led to this sort of odd nursery rhyme being produced. They merely get up there and just present it and read it. That gets them used to speaking in front of people. Think of this as the grammar of rhetoric. It's getting our students used to speaking in front of people. By the time our students are in 3rd or 4th grade, they've spoken a number of times in front of their class. It's not a big deal to them anymore, and they're working on becoming public speakers. The best part about the Trivium, when you look at it as a whole, and in particular how we implement it here at LCS, is it creates independence with our students. Our students learn to think, they learn to become independent, and that's so valuable as they leave our school. When they get into college and they get into workforce, they're going to be the leaders. They're going to be the ones seeking opportunity because they've been taught how to do so. Next, we have something that's fairly unique, and it's called departmentalization. So when the school first opened, we felt it was necessary that our 1st through 5th graders would have the same amount of contact time with experts in the field as our middle schoolers and high schoolers. So our 1st through 5th graders have their own science teacher, history teacher, math teacher, and English teacher, along with art, language, music, physical education, so on and so forth. And the question was raised at the beginning of the school, which was, is it good for a 1st or 2nd grader to have 7, 8 teachers on a daily basis? And after doing this for 9 years, we can unequivocally say, yes, it is. It creates a real freshness to the day. I went back to school to teach history, not math, not science, not English, to teach history because I love it. And so you have content experts who are enthusiastic about their specialty coming and teaching each day to these students. So the days fly by. Also, each subject gets its due. No subject is neglected because the teacher doesn't like it or isn't as knowledgeable about it, whatever the case may be. And so that way students get a well-rounded elementary education. And lastly, and maybe even most importantly, is it creates a very family-like environment here at LCS. When you step back and think about it, a traditional 1st grader has a good relationship with one teacher in the school. Maybe 2 if they went to kindergarten there. But here at LCS, you think about it, after a couple weeks, a 1st grader has a solid relationship with their 4 content teachers and their coordinator. And so it begins to feel like a family, and we see these students grow up through the years. And so the departmentalization is great academically, but it also fosters relationships and creates a great family-like environment. Now I want to speak to the classroom coordinator because departmentalization would not work without them. So our students in the elementary school, they don't go from classroom to classroom. That would be a disaster. They stay in their classroom and the teachers come to them. And our classroom coordinators, they are with the students all day, every day. They get the students prepared for recess. They get the students prepared for lunch. They teach our students core virtues, and they also prepare our students for their daily classes. So for example, before history, our students will have their history folders out, their history books out, and they'll be standing ready to go when our teachers enter the room. And then when history is over, the coordinator will prepare them for the next class. And so the classroom coordinators keep everything organized. And as a parent, it's fantastic because if I have a general message for the teachers, I don't need to think about the 8 to 9 different teachers my student may have. I just send an email to the coordinator. Would you please disperse this information to our teachers? And so the classroom coordinator is your point of contact. Also, the classroom coordinator is the heart of their classroom. My boys who have been going to this school since they were kindergartners, every single year, I ask them, who is your favorite teacher? And they always say their classroom coordinator. And so that's how departmentalization works and runs in our school. And lastly, I'll close with, we have high academic standards here. We like the idea of homework. We value the notion of hard work. As we adults know, hard work yields success. If you don't work hard, you're not going to succeed. High academic standards, though, doesn't mean everybody finishes in the same place. If we were to do that, then we would be teaching over some students' heads we'd be dragging some students down, and typically we'd only be teaching to the average, which isn't fair to our students. So we view high academic standards as all of our students growing from where they're at. We don't want our students to necessarily compare themselves to each other. What's your best? How can you improve? What can you do to write a better essay this time or score higher on your math test? And so we push our students. We give them challenges that we know they can accept. We set the bar high, but by setting the bar high, we get more out of our students than they think they could have achieved. After all, we are teachers, and teachers are essentially leaders. And what do good leaders do? Good leaders get more out of their people than they think they can get out of themselves.